my water just broke. I felt like things really intensified.
She was right there and she was coming.
It was an amazing feeling.
I'm going to cry just thinking about it. I could feel her head.
We heard her cry. We were squeezing hands and she was screaming.
I'm Bryn Hunt Palmer, and you're listening to The Birth Hour. This podcast is designed as a safe place to come together and share childbirth stories. Stick around and join us to hear informative and empowering birth journeys from all over the world. I'd like to take a minute to talk about this episode's sponsor, Aeroflow Breast Pumps. Did you know that breast pumps and milk storage bags, maternity compression garments, even lactation education and support can all be covered by your insurance? Aeroflow helps millions of parents unlock these breastfeeding and postpartum essentials by working directly with your insurance company to get these free essentials shipped straight to your door. Aeroflow offers all major pump brands, including Medela, Spectra, Motif, Lancino, Amita, LV, Willow, and more. Visit aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birthhour to fill out their free and easy qualify through insurance form. Don't forget to use the promo code BIRTHHOUR15 in their online shop for 15% off all supplies and accessories. You've got enough on your plate. Why not let Aeroflow Breast Pumps help support you on your breastfeeding journey? At the end of this episode, I talk with Kate not only about getting her breast pump for free through Aeroflow, but also about taking advantage of their online lactation classes. So stay tuned for that conversation. Before we get to today's birth story, I want to talk a little bit about our online childbirth course. It's called Know Your Options, and this is the course you've been looking for if you just have that gut feeling that you know you should be taking a childbirth course, but maybe the one that's being offered to you by your care provider is not exactly what you're looking for. It might be more catered towards the type of birth they want you to have versus making you informed of all your different options and how to address different things that happen in birth, because as this podcast has shown us, birth is very unpredictable. So we would love to have you check out our 12-module course. You can go to thebirthhour.com/course to see detailed outlines of what is included in the course. You will also get a bonus course called Beyond the First Latch that is an additional 6 modules all about pumping, feeding your baby, going back to paid work if that's part of your plan. And we have a special coupon code for you. It's 100OFF for $100 off enrollment. Again, that's thebirthhour.com/course. Another way you can get involved with the Birth Hour community is by joining our Patreon. This is where you pledge your support of the Birth Hour at $5 a month or more, and you get perks in return, like access to all of our archived episodes. That's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of episodes. We've been putting out birth stories since 2015, and those are all available in our archives via Patreon. And you also get access to our private Facebook community, which is a really great group of people who are there to support you, become friends, and just encourage you on this journey through parenthood. So find out more about that at patreon.com/birthhour. Today's birth story guest is Robyn, and she's going to share about her experience with gestational diabetes and pregnancy, as well as her induction, which she had at the hospital without pain medication. All right, let's hear from Robyn. Hi, Robyn. Welcome to the Birth Hour. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Bryn. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to get to your story today. But before we do that, can you tell listeners a little bit about you and your family?
Yes. I live with my husband, Eric, and my mom, who we call Momo. And we live just outside of Portland in Gresham, Oregon, where we've lived for a couple years, but we were in Chicago for 10 years before that. And we've got our 6-month-old, Augie, and a dog and a cat, Lupita and Mia. Mm-hmm. So it's a full multi-generational household.
Fun. All right. Well, let's talk about finding out you were pregnant with Augie, how your pregnancy went, whatever you want to share.
Sure. So we tried to conceive for 5 months. So it was on the 5th month that we got pregnant, and I had an IUD removed. So I knew it was going to take a little bit of time, but it definitely, starts to wear on you after a few months of trying.
Yeah.
And then that was kind of when I started really taking more care to pay attention to my body temperature and looking up all the different things you can do to conceive. And we were very, very lucky to conceive on our 5th round. So I got pregnant, and the one real important thing I want to share about my first trimester, I had all the regular symptoms, but I had just gotten into a musical comedy parody show. And so I was feeling terrible and trying to be horizontal as long as I could every single day. And then I would have to get up and go to rehearsal.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like playing instruments and singing, and it was a comedy show. So there's all this laughter, and no one except the director and my musical partner knew that I was pregnant. So I was like really trying not to show, and I was green at the gills, and I always had some candied ginger next to me at the keyboard. And but it was really lovely. And at the end of that run, I was able to, announce to everyone, yes, I'm pregnant. And it's been just such a joy to be pregnant in my first trimester and be surrounded by music and laughter. So that was a really special time for us.
Yeah, I'm sure really hard, but like a nice distraction too from feeling bad.
It actually really helped. And in hindsight, I think I probably would have just continued to feel bad 24 hours a day, but being able to go to that rehearsal and laugh a little bit really helped. So for sure.
Awesome.
And then pregnancy, I don't think that I'm one of those women who really loved being pregnant, but I definitely did enjoy it. And I particularly enjoyed it getting into my third trimester. Right around 28 weeks, I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. So, had to go through all of the nasty drinking the syrup water and then having to administer shots every night. And I think, for whatever it's worth, I actually did really appreciate having a really healthy diet in my last trimester. I think it really helped me feel good in my body. And I think I walked 10,000 steps every day for the basically all of third try and most of second try too, which once he was out was also really sweet to be able to walk back the path that we took every day when he was still inside. And then, third trimester was really lovely. I really enjoyed feeling him, move around, and he's definitely one of those really kicky little guys in there, and it sometimes really messed with my heartburn, and my sleep for sure was thrown off by that. But everything went pretty well, and I was very grateful to have my mom and my husband, who were both very loving and very caring through all of that. And, going through the holidays very pregnant was really fun. He ended up coming out on January 13th. So it was a very big holiday season for us.
Yeah. Okay. And so what kind of planning did you have for like the type of birth you wanted?
Yeah. So I listened to the birth hour every single day on my walks. So I had gotten a lot of insight from all of the amazing stories that you've shared over the years. And somewhere in, I want to say it was maybe my second trimester, I started to feel really lonely in my birth. And I read somewhere on, I think Reddit, was just like, if you know people who've had babies, just ask them, ask for resources, ask for support. So I do have a group chat with a ton of women that I'm not besties with, but I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm looking for resources on birth. If anyone has any, which is actually how I was referred to listen to the birth hour by my friend Katie. And Ina May's Guide to Childbirth was the other primary one I used, and then Emily Oster's Expecting Better. So after, reading and listening to so many stories, the decision that I made was I'm really curious to see what my body is capable of. And, I did a half marathon back in 2022. And before that, you could not have paid me $1 million to run 13 miles, but it really is kind of this questioning of my body and myself to say, can we do it together? Can my mind and my body work together to achieve this crazy thing? And so after learning so much about natural childbirth and hypnobirth practices and hearing all of the stories, I kind of wanted to see if I could do it too. So I really did a lot of meditation. I did a lot of mind-body connection, particularly when it comes to the pelvic floor and trying to find awareness to my pelvic floor in the craziest settings, in the car, at work, walking, in the middle of a stressful moment. Where is your pelvic floor? Which might sound silly, but I do think mentally it prepped me a lot. And I did a lot of very gentle prenatal yoga. I think we think of prenatal yoga and we think that it has some implication of being hard or difficult, but it's like, no, girl, I'm just stretching over here and I'm really doing hip rockings in 3 or 4 different directions. And I'm really just stretching my lower back and my hamstrings out. But I really did it with intention. And in the 3rd trimester, I did that almost every single day, a few times a day, to help prepare my body and my mind for what was to come. So I had a decent idea of what I was going to do.
Yeah, I feel like yoga is so good. Like even if all you can do is some like cat cows and hip rocking.
Yeah.
I feel like my first midwife told me to do like 100 cat cows a day, like
so
throughout the day. I know, I'm probably making that up, but I remember just like always like getting down and doing that. And now when my back starts to hurt, I still kind of do that sometimes. So
yeah, definitely. Same.
All right. So anything else from pregnancy?
Not that I can think of. I just, I remember walking so much, and we live in Oregon. So I was pretty determined to like hike until I could no longer hike. So I think we really stopped hiking as 3rd trimester came along. But yeah, I was just really grateful to have fresh air in the outdoors. We moved from Chicago, and I remember that being in Chicago during COVID especially felt very like tight and very isolating in a way, to feel like you're in the city of 4 million people, but you can't really engage with anyone.
Yeah.
So just having like the open air and the freshness of the Northwest was, for me, a real blessing. I started to get really hot. Like my body temperature was so high by the end. So it was just nice to have those cold walks in the morning.
Yeah. My 2nd pregnancy, I lived in Oregon, but I was on the coast. So it basically never got hot. Like I look at pictures and I have like jeans on at 9 months pregnant. I'm like, wow, that would never happen in Texas where I had my 3rd. But yeah, that fresh air is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it does a lot.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and talk about how labor started.
Yes. So I was pretty determined in my mind, even though I got the diagnosis for gestational diabetes, I really wanted it to start naturally, which, in hindsight, I don't know how realistic that was on a first pregnancy, but I had a really great experience with my medical team, and not everybody does. So I have Kaiser Permanente HMO, and I was with actually my family practitioner right up until about 30 weeks, which was after I got my GD diagnosis. And because of that, I was going in more regularly. They were doing the monitoring weekly toward the end. And I made an agreement with the midwife, and I said, because she was like, I would really like to pull you in at, 38 and 5. And I'm like, I will negotiate with you to 39 and 1. Give me a little bit of time to try to walk this baby out, smoke it out, with spicy foods and intercourse and all of that. Give me a chance. So 5 days before he was born, so he was born, I think, ultimately 6 days before his due date, I believe. So 5 days before he was born, my mucus plug came out, and I was so excited. And it's like midnight, and I'm like, look, look at my mucus plug. It's so cool. Thinking that this could be a sign that something's going to happen, but it was not. I started getting period cramps around that time, and I really started to psych myself up. And then the next day, I think I started having contractions, and then I had a bout of loose diarrhea, which also, you hear stories that are like, and then things kicked off after I had diarrhea. So I continued to get really excited about things starting to happen, and I continued to be kind of period crampy throughout the day. And then another day passed, and I woke up in the middle of the night cramping. And so I'm consistently feeling like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. I'm going to walk this baby out. I'm curb walking. I'm continuing my 10,000 steps, which at this point, I think I started to have Braxton Hicks pretty regularly in the last, I'll say like 3 or 4 weeks of pregnancy. And I reached out to my doula and I was like, hey girl, please help me get this going. What can we do? So she told me, not necessarily a recommendation, but something that you could consider is the midwife's brew. So that Friday, I took midwife's brew at 2 p.m. I was nervous about it, right? So I know that some people have really strong reactions positively and some people have reactions negatively. So I was nervous about it, but we tried it because I was really trying to get something started naturally before the induction, which was that Sunday.
Will you tell people what's in that for those that don't know?
Oh my gosh. Let's see if I can remember it.
The main thing.
Yes. So the main ingredient is castor oil.
Yeah.
And castor oil is really strong.
Mm-hmm.
And in the whole thing, because we ended up putting you put a couple of different fruit juices in there and you throw the castor oil in there and you blend it. And to me, it didn't taste bad. I didn't taste it really at all. But I know that it essentially induces cramping in your intestine is what it does. And that can trigger other contractions in your body. So I took it at 2:15 p.m. and by 4 o'clock, stuff was happening. In hindsight, I just think it was more Braxton Hicks. I really don't think that my body reacted almost at all to the midwife's brew.
Oh, no.
I didn't have any bad poops. I didn't have any bad tummy. I was just like, okay. So at that point, I'm also trying like hand expressing, and I had been pumping for a few days to try and get colostrum coming in, and I had taken many, many warm baths. And I'm like, we're gonna do it. And I'm doing miles circuit all around the house. So it took about, I don't know, probably 6 hours that afternoon. And we did get to a point where I felt like contractions were happening and they were timing out, but they never got close to 411. They really only got to, so that would be 5 minutes between contractions and contractions lasting about a minute long for over an hour. So we got kind of to that place. But by then it's like 10, 11 p.m. And I'm like, I'm tired and I'm just going to go to sleep. But of course, as it happens by the morning, everything kind of petered out. So then we're at Saturday morning. Contractions kind of continue after I have a really hot shower and I'm hand expressing some colostrum. We ate breakfast, we took a walk, we do more miles circuit, we have lunch. I continue to take warm baths and pump, continue to walk. And at that point, I was like, you know what? It's not happening today. I think we're going to get induced. So kind of had to go through the mental process of, okay, we are not going to be able to kick this off naturally. Which for me, as someone who really wanted to go to have an unmedicated birth, now my brain is starting to think about, am I going to need an epidural because I'm going to get induced? We've heard so many stories from women around their experience with inductions and, potentially how much harder the labor is or how much more intense the contractions are. And I'm a pretty stubborn person, admittedly. So I just keep talking to my husband like, I think I can do it. I think I can do it. I think I have a pretty significant pain tolerance. Let's just see what happens. So everything really did peter out by the end of Saturday. So Sunday, we weren't going in until 8 p.m. So we had a really lovely day. We had like eggs and potatoes and like coffee and really enjoyed all of those things and took our time that afternoon. So we get to the hospital around 8 p.m. on Sunday, and we had planned it out this way because the midwife that I had been working with, so I went to just a side note, I went to a hospital run by Kaiser Permanente where their entire L&D is run by midwives and they only have the OBGYN on call for difficult decision making, which I feel like in an HMO, setting is really rare. And I was just really grateful to have that experience. So if anyone in the Northwest is on Kaiser and they're concerned about their birth experience, I highly recommend the Sunnyside hospital location because their midwives are amazing. So anyway, we get to the hospital at 8 p.m. and mentally I'm like, I'm here. We're doing it. This is the thing. We check in and the first nurse who sees us is like, cool, so I can give you a Foley bulb and you can go home. And I'm like, excuse me, what? I'm not interested in that. So that was really funny. And I was just like, is that even, I've heard that this, the ripening bulb can be really intense. Really, you just like send people home with that? It was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, it's a lot to like gear up for too, to just be told that.
I know. I'm like,
it's like, I'm here. Let's do it.
I have my bags packed. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
So that was a little surprising. But I work in business and I was like, no, ma'am, I'm not going to be doing that. Thank you very much. I'm very excited to see my room. So she checked me there in intake and she said, you're 1 centimeter dilated. You are maybe 15-20% effaced. And this was annoying to me because the week before I was also 1 centimeter dilated. So I had been a centimeter for over a week, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've done all this walking. I've done all this like prenatal yoga. I've done all these things. I even had the midwife's brew and I'm still just 1 centimeter dilated. Fine. It is what it is. So they took us into the room and I'd say probably around like 9:30 at that point after intake, the midwife came in. We talked about our plan. So I am very scared of Pitocin and I did not have to use any Pitocin until after birth. So I will continue to be afraid of Pitocin, but I decided to go with misoprostol. So the hormone in misoprostol is prostaglandin, and everything that I had read or heard, I'm really trying to be like informed in my decision making. So I wanted to go with misoprostol, assuming that it might be a slightly less intense experience because I still am trying to have this unmedicated birth, which I guess I'm not sure if I can actually say that because it is induced. So you do get medication, but I didn't have any pain medication for my birth. So we had administered misoprostol vaginally every 3 hours, which I didn't know you could do that actually, just like put it straight up in there. We were using a pill, not a ribbon. And she's like, no, I think it's better closer to the source. I'm like, okay, girl, let's do it. So contractions did pick up in frequency and intensity in the middle of the night. They had me sleeping with a peanut ball between my legs on my side, which is very uncomfortable. It's like rubber peanut ball between your legs while you're trying to sleep is not fun. And contractions started to come fairly steady. And they have that monitor in the room where you're looking at not only yours, but like 5 other women's contraction rates. And you're like, which one am I? Am I consistent? I'm not sure. And the nurses had told me like, don't look at the screens. It's not an indication of how you're doing. But as a naturally competitive and stubborn person, of course I did. And so we continued misoprostol throughout the night. And then I think at 8 a.m., the next midwife came in and her name is Shanti. And that's important because I'll talk about Shanti later. So she comes in and she talks about the day. She's like, here's my plan. My plan is to give you the ripening bulb, the Foley bulb, see how it goes. If you really want to pick things up, that's the way to go. And, maybe when it comes out, we'll talk about where you're at and whether we need to break your waters. And we'll kind of give you that last chance to do medication if you want to for pain. And once that bulb went in, it was only 3.5 hours before it came out. So I went from, I think I was at a 2, maybe when she checked me that morning, to a 4 in a very short period of time. And we also stopped the misoprostol once the bulb went in. So something about that bulb really got my contractions going and like quickly.
Yeah.
For a while there, it almost felt like there were no breaks in between. Like these contractions really started to kick on top of each other. So it's really hard to say if that was misoprostol or if that was the bulb or if it was a combination of both or it was my body. But yeah, it started to get really intense at that time. So we have the bulb in. I started doing a lot of the things that I had been mentally planning. I was trying different positions on the bed, facing the head of the bed on all fours. And I remember one of the stories that you have on the birth hour, there was a woman who shared that she had like covered her eyes. And for me, that was critical. I was covering my eyes so that I could really focus inward on like my body, my pelvic floor, trying to really breathe into that open sensation and allowing things to happen. And I went from the bed to the shower, back to the bed, to the birth ball. And I did at some point puke a couple different times in the bathroom from just the intensity of it. And we did a lot of swaying. I was having my husband give me counter pressure. And I forgot to mention that my doula had been there the night before when we had started things, but she had not been back yet. And so at some point I asked Eric, I was like, when is Lauren coming back? And he's like, oh, well, when do you want her back? I'm like, right now, please get her in here. And so luckily, Lauren ended up coming at exactly the right time. So when the nurse came back to check on me, this is when I still have the Foley bulb in. She's like, you know what? Next time you pee, just like give the strings a tug. Just see what happens. And when I did that, I went to the bathroom, I pulled him out. I have a really funny picture of me like smiling ear to ear, holding this like bloody Foley bulb. But it was so nice that it had come out. And I was like, okay, cool. Like things are really starting to happen. After that point, it gets a little blurry in the middle, but at some point, they did bring the midwife back in, Shanti. She checked me and she's like, hey, you are 4.5, 5 centimeters dilated and fully effaced. And here's my thing. If you are serious about kicking it off and going all natural, I would recommend that we break your waters. And I had this moment in my mind where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm scared. It's going to get really intense, really fast. But also, like, if I want to do this, we should do this. Why would I consider delaying this any longer? So I'm like, do it. Just before I think too hard about it, break them. And I will say that along the entire journey of having contractions and the intensity of them and really needing to focus and all of that experience, the breaking of the waters was such a relief. It really feels like you're, having this pressure relieved, and the warm sensation of the waters was awesome. Luckily, the waters were clean. They didn't have to worry about any meconium. And yeah, then it gets really intense. So from the time we broke waters to the time we ended up in the bathtub room, couldn't have been more than 90 minutes. And luckily, I think that was right around the time that Lauren, my doula, came in. And I was really grateful to see her because my husband, who is a strong, tall dude, could not push hard enough on my hips. Like I was really leaning into the counter pressure, and I was like, get out of here. Lauren, come over here. And she, people apply counter pressure like slightly differently based on how their bodies are built against yours. And having hers also just felt so good. So we had prepped the nurses. We are going to want the tub. Please prepare the tub for us. And at that point, because things were really starting to feel so intense, and my contractions were really on top of each other. I am talking no more than like 15, 20 seconds in between. And I'm trying to really keep my tones low and mooing through things and moaning through things as low in tone as I can. And at one point I was like, guys, if we want to go, we have to go. I do not know that I'm going to make it much longer standing, period. So we start to move out of my room, and I have to stop at the counter by the door. And the nurse is like, oh, are you going to throw up? Here's a cup. And I almost laughed in her face. There was no way I was going to be puking into a small vessel. Luckily, there was a sink right by the door. And so I'm puking in the sink. And at the same time, I have this like gush of blood coming out on the floor. So we kind of waddle our way down the hallway. I'm like, I'm sorry, I made a mess. But also, like, don't try and make me puke in a small bag. That was never going to work. So we walk down the hallway to the room with a tub, and I immediately get into the tub. I'm like, I'm going in with my little paper robe on. I'm going in with the monitors around my belly. I don't care. I'm getting into this water. And that immediately felt really, really good. Just to have a little bit of gravity pulled away from your body when you are in such a compromising position. And at this point, obviously, I think I'm entering transition, and I have missed that window where they could have possibly administered any pain medication. And Shanti never came back. No one ever came back to say, this is your last chance. And in hindsight, I think that Shanti was actually doing that to respect my wishes of having an unmedicated birth. So in hindsight, kudos to her. But in the moment, I'm like, where is she to tell me that this is my last chance? Luckily, Eric and I had a conversation about what our code word would be if I actually really, really, really was ready for that epidural. But by the time we got to the tub, that was long gone. So we got into the tub room. I get into the water, and I was really shaky. Like my legs were starting to shake. I was starting to get a little bit of the chills, so that water felt even better. And one of the things that I had read in my research was that frog pose in yoga, which is when you're facing forward, but your hips are like externally rotated in like a frog push position, that position is actually pretty good for opening your hips and helping release your pelvic floor. So that part I was like, cool, I know what pose I'm going to take in this tub. And we knew when we got into the room, I didn't know this because my brain was a whole mess, but my husband tells me that when we got into that room that they said, you've got 90 minutes in the tub. And that is like how long they allow people at any given time. So we were in the tub and I'm in frog position. And that was really when everything that I've read and listened to about hypnobirthing really came into play. And this is also, I think, where my doula became this ultimate ally for me. And I'll share her information at the end. But we had worked together on creating a Canva document of like 20 different birthing mantras and quotes that have resonated with me from a variety of different books and resources. And she and I really, when it started to get intense, the things that we were saying were, it's my body, my pressure. And so when things were starting to really feel intense, and I've heard women on this podcast say it before, I don't think that the word is pain. I do think it is pressure, and I do think it is intensity. And I kept saying, my body, my pressure. I kept saying, I want this. And that was one that I wasn't expecting that to come out of my mouth. But in the moment, it's like, I want this. My body and my brain are at odds with each other because one of them is experiencing this really intense thing and the other one is receiving pain signals from the body. And I just kept trying to remind my body why we're doing it. I want this. Another phrase that I kept saying was, I am doing this. Because there is always that like fear of I can't do it. And I just kept trying to remind myself, I am doing this. We are doing this. And the last thing that we continued to say was, we're a team. And there was a really beautiful quote or mantra that I had found in a book that had said, my baby and I are a team and we are doing this together. And I just found that to be really, really sweet and really thoughtful. And I thought it was so sweet to include baby in the process. So it gets really intense. And as I mentioned earlier, I do music on the side. I was a trained singer a long time ago. And one of the things that really surprised me was as it got really toward the end, I imagine as I'm like 8 or 9 centimeters along, these like guttural and primal sounds were coming out of my body, and they were somewhere between a scream and singing. Like there was vibrato in it and there was tone and richness to it, but I'm also in this tub giving birth. And I remember hearing it and thinking, okay, the pitch is too high. We got to keep bringing it down, because the lower that the tones are, that helps kind of, if it's a high tone, that's indicative of like constriction. And I really wanted to help things move low and down and all the way through. That was another thing we kept saying. I forgot. We kept saying low, down, low. And my doula was there holding my hand, saying things with me, and my husband was to my side, and he really it was so hard for him, and I feel for him, because and I know that this is a common experience, but when your partner is there next to you feeling so incredibly hopeless that they cannot do anything to alleviate your pain, but all you really need for them is to be there, it just meant so much to me to have both of their support there in that moment. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to cry.
Yeah, that's sweet though that memory is still so strong.
Yeah, definitely. And so, you get through this, you're like, by the time we kind of get to that place, you're like, wow, I've been giving birth for a year. It feels like it's taken so much time. And really, they would have kicked us out of the tub if we had extended past 90 minutes. So it really wasn't that long at all. And so one of the things that I'm always just so fascinated by is this timeline, right? We get in at 8 p.m. Sunday night, and we're now at like 3:30 on Monday. So this is all things considered, looking like a pretty productive labor experience. At some point, I remember specifically saying, I'm feeling pushy. And you kind of, you're in it. So you're like, I'm feeling pushy. And I didn't know that I was going to use the word pushy. And the nurse is like, all right, well, get out. I'm going to check you real quick just to see where you're at. And my husband had created 2 different playlists. There was a playlist for labor that was all very calm and soothing. And then there was a pushing playlist. And right around this time, I was like, hit it. We got to go. I got to start getting some like serious aggro pushing vibes. And so she checks me and she's like, do not push. You are 9 centimeters dilated. Like, we'll get you back in the water for a few minutes and then I'm going to pull you out again and see how you do. Well, hilariously, there is this song that he had on the playlist called F Yeah. And the song literally goes, F yeah, boom, boom, F yeah. And it just so happened that it timed out so perfectly with
Oh my gosh.
And I was laughing, like internally, I'm laughing, like, oh my gosh, just because I was like, I hate this song. I can't believe that he put it on my playlist. And somehow it is exactly what I need right now. So the nurse pulled me out again just a few minutes later because I just kept telling her, I'm like, I think I'm pooping. I'm in the tub. I'm like, am I pooping? I think I might be pooping. And so she's like, come on out. We'll get you. Which is also a really vulnerable moment, I will say, for people listening. You're gonna poop, and it's okay because it's so low on the category of priorities at that time. But the sensation is 100% real. So they pull me out, and she's like, "Okay, you're at 10. If you want to push, we can push." And she's putting on her gloves. I've got crazy music in the background. I've got my doula on my right and my husband on my left. And my Augie starts to crown. And you feel that initial wave of relief because the head is through. And I remember asking the nurse, I'm like, can you pull the rest of him out now? Like, I got the biggest part through. And she goes, Robyn, no, you have to keep pushing. You have to push the rest of him through. And I just had this moment where I was like, okay, fine. And I sit up and because I'm a trained singer, I also wonder if that has something to do with my control of my diaphragm. But I really cranked it out. And I am not kidding you when I say the nurse had one glove on one hand and she had to catch him from flying off of the table.
Oh my gosh.
And he was out within 90 seconds of pushing.
Wow.
Which is so crazy. Eric calls him Augie the Airborne because he caught air apparently on the way out.
Oh.
And what they say about it feeling like an octopus is true. It's like head and then blah, 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 blah. That's everything else. It's just so funny to me.
Yeah.
So they pulled him out. He started crying. They wrapped him up. And I had specifically said, I don't want him to be cleaned up. Give me all of it. I want to really create the most natural environment for us to do skin to skin. So he was put on my chest. And I remember the first thing that I said was like, hi, I know you. And that was a really sweet moment. This little guy who's just been kicking me nonstop for the past 12 weeks, for him to be topside was just really, really special. And he did really well, all of his testing right there in the moment, scored high. And I forget what that's called when they do the little test right after.
The APGAR score?
Yes. Yeah. He was a 9 on APGAR. And right after he was born, of course, that's when Shanti and then all of the other rest of the team comes like flying into the room. But I will say for me, that didn't change my experience. It was like I was too busy, loving on this little guy and looking at my husband and weeping and just so in love with Augie already. And my midwife was like, we've got a 2nd-degree tear. I'm going to give you some local anesthetic. And then they have to like pump your tummy out to make sure that you're able to, nothing is left over. So I had to deliver the placenta, and then they stick their hand in there, which, honestly, I'm always so surprised that they're just like, nope, we're just going in to do like a little sweep. And then they're pushing down on the tummy. I know I've heard some women say that was worse than labor for them. For me, it sucked, but it was nothing like the delivery. And the like transition period of labor for me was the most intense for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then after everything got cleaned up, I had a 2nd-degree tear. There was a lot of blood. So they wanted me to hang out for a while. But then I walked to the bathroom 30 minutes later. And to me, that was really crazy. And that was ultimately one of the reasons why I did want to have as much of an unmedicated birth as possible, is because of the recovery and just knowing what I've read about the body's response to that. And my mom had 2 C-sections, and she says that they messed up her back with the epidural. So I was wary of that anyway. So yeah, he came out, and we spent less than 24 hours in the hospital after that. I think he was born at 4:59 p.m. And I think around 4:59 p.m. the next day, they let us go home. We had a consultant, a lactation consultant, come into our room once we were in postpartum. And I have a pretty big chest. And that was one thing that I found really confusing in the hospital. Was I had one lactation consultant say, just if you've got these like big boobs, maybe using a nipple guard can help. And then I have another lactation consultant that's like, you do not need a nipple guard, never use that. The more that you use it, the more they'll become dependent on it. And I really feel like it's ultimately just a conversation between you and baby, and doing your best to figure it out. I was very lucky that I didn't have any issues with supply. So yeah, I guess that's the birth.
Amazing. Thanks so much for sharing that story. Are you ready to talk about postpartum?
Yes. So postpartum, the first week, oh my gosh, the first week was, to me, awful. Everything was fine. He was feeding okay. But what happened was his 2-day checkup, when we took him in, all of a sudden his bilirubin levels had gone really high. And to be fair, I think as a brand new mom, I probably wasn't feeding him as often as I maybe could or should have in those first 48 hours. And I think that's tough for moms because you're like, I don't know, I can't really tell if he's hungry unless he's crying when they're a day old and you're trying to figure out what their needs are. So his bilirubin level was too high. They had us go in and do the little heel prick where they take his blood. And that same day, they sent us home with the Billy blanket. We refer to it in our house as the disco blanket. And the worst part about that is you can't hold your baby. For however long, however many days, you just have to let your baby be in this Billy blanket. And every single day, we went back to the hospital to get his blood drawn. So you're also emotionally like, please stop poking my baby, but also trying to continue to feed, trying to get his bilirubin level down, and trying to make sure that everything is fine. So emotionally, that was really hard for me. And the only way we were able to do it, because he was so kicky in the womb and ended up, to this day, continues to be really active with his legs. We had to zip him into it. So that's a hack for moms listening who end up having a kid who has to go on the Billy blanket. If you have one of those swaddles that zips, you can put that swaddle in there and zip your baby right onto their Billy blanket. And that really helped out with our sleep because it was impossible for him to sleep alone at that time. So we were co-sleeping with him in the Billy blanket zipped into his swaddle. And then the rest of postpartum, for me, there was definitely a big hormone crash. I remember there was one day where everything in the world was totally fine, except that I was just weeping for hours and hours and hours. And that was, and my husband's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think so."
Just literally can't control it.
Yep, they're just going to come and it's all going to be fine. And I'm going to find some sappy thing to watch on TV. I do also feel really grateful that I had a husband who was able to, he took 2 weeks off when we gave birth. And then we staggered the rest of our parental leave. So I took my full 12 and then he started the rest of his leave.
Mm.
So both of us had time with him. And I also felt so lucky. Each of us has our own individual relationships with our parents, but my mom, Momo, being there for me postpartum and whatever it was that I needed, if it was coffee or, soup or just someone to hold the baby so that I could do anything else, was really, really special to have this household full of love and support. And then we started going on short walks around the neighborhood, maybe like 2 weeks afterward. My body, it's a new body. And that's something I will say is it's really hard to look at your body after giving birth and feeling so proud of what this body has accomplished, and also trying to find grace for yourself and understanding that this is a totally new body. And one of the best pieces of advice that I had gotten at that time was go buy clothes for your new body. Don't try and fit into something that is not for a body that's given birth. And so I really appreciated that sentiment. And I think it's a really good piece of advice for all moms out there. Gestational diabetes went away right away. And I do totally feel for all the women out there who have to give themselves those GD shots because they are so annoying. It's not that they're painful. They're just so annoying. But it's been nice to get back into the swing of things. And I think going back to work was pretty tough. I went back to work right around, he was 12 weeks because I took 14 weeks off. And I definitely cried the first day because you have like your whole pumping set up. And I'm lucky enough that my building has a pump room. And so I'm going down there 3 times a day and I'm concerned about supply and concerned about all the things. But the other thing that I think I want to share about postpartum is just like, be really careful about buying into stuff on social media, because there's this whole like exclusive pumping movement. And then there's also this whole like really focused on exclusively breastfeeding or exclusively nursing movement. And I really think that it's just between you and your baby. It's literally no one else's business.
100%.
And it's so hard when you are just getting fed so much stuff from different influencers of like how it could or should look. And for me, I nurse in the morning, I nurse at night, and everything else it's still technically exclusively breastfed from a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a huge stash in the freezer, but I do have a little one. So when Eric and I were finally comfortable going away for one single night, but we did it. I was pumping and dumping the milk, but at least I knew that he was taken care of, and I knew that I had milk on standby. So everything's good now. He's 6 months old. He's almost 7 months old now. He really wants to walk, has very little interest in crawling. So it's a lot of assisted walking right now, and he's experimenting with solids, which is really fun. I did have like a whole emotional day one day when I was like, the more solids he eats, the less he's going to need my breast milk.
Yeah.
And that's a tough hormone dump. I wasn't expecting it. And then all of a sudden I was like, but it's our special thing. It's like just his and mine that we do together. So I've tried to reframe it as, wow, what an exciting opportunity to share food with you and to see you like developing little hand and finger muscles and bringing things to your mouth and being able to share food with you. So that reframe has been really helpful for me. But yeah,
it'll be fun. That comes up a lot in the Patreon Facebook group is like the hormone shift with weaning too. I know you're not talking about weaning, but just in general, like there's so many phases and stages to all of that. So
yeah.
All right. So what about resources you want to highlight at the end?
Yeah. So I mentioned a few of the books earlier. Emily Oster's Expecting Better. If you're someone who values like science-based information and evidence-based information, that's an amazing place to start. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth was so awesome to read. To be honest, I skipped the birth stories in that book because I was getting all my birth stories from the birth hour. But a lot of the other stuff, there's the rule of sphincters, which is like the weirdest title of a rule ever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, it's like open throat, open butt. And that is open everything.
Yeah.
Which really helped like mentally prepare me for my birth. And yeah, the birth hour is the number one resource that I recommend to people who are pregnant or giving birth.
Oh, thanks.
And the other one that I think is just really nice to have when you're feeling particularly alone or feeling particularly isolated. All of those Reddit subthreads or subreddits, the newborns, new parents, exclusively pumping, even just for like information, if you are a pumping mom at work, is a really good place for resources. There are so many different subs on Reddit that you just like search a question that you have. So sometimes I'm like 6-month-old rubbing ear. And it's like, oh, here are all these threads of all these women talking about the exact same thing. And it just feels really supportive if you don't necessarily have that group of other mothers to talk to. And then the last one that I'll share, or last couple actually. So my doula is Lauren Guarazi, and I found her through Portland Doula Love in Oregon. She was fantastic and has become a friend. She is also pregnant right now, which is super exciting. I get to be with her on the other side of things. But when she gets back to doing doula work, she's fantastic, and I highly recommend her. And then there's a TikTok account. So I know that I said, like, don't listen to social media, but there's one that I do really like. Her name is The Baby Whisperer on TikTok. She's fantastic for moms who are like, I've been reading all this stuff about breastfeeding, but my baby is breastfeeding every 45 minutes instead of every 90 minutes. Or, I've read all this stuff about XYZ and I'm not understanding how. So her TikTok is really focused on breastfeeding. She's a board certified lactation consultant, and she just really empowered me during the days when I was like, I do not know what the heck I'm doing when it comes to breastfeeding. She's got a video that just says, "You're doing great."
Awesome.
On tough days, it's incredibly important for all of us to hear that. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we will link to those things. And then what's the best way for people to connect with you?
yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. It's set to private, but you can DM me. My handle is Robyn Estelle, Robyn Estelle, Estelle. And yeah, I'd be happy to talk to anyone about all things birth, pregnancy, and parenting. I'm always happy to have more community.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Robyn, for sharing.
Thank you, Bran. It's been so nice to have this resource.
Now I'm going to chat with Kate about Aeroflow breast pumps and how you can get your breast pump and other things for free through insurance, like their online classes, accessories, all kinds of great things. All of that is at aeroflowbreastpumps.com/birth hour. All right, let's hear from Kate. Hi, Kate. Thanks so much for coming on the Birth Hour today to chat with me about Aeroflow breast pumps.
Yay. Hi, Bryn. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, you reached out via Instagram about Aeroflow and your experience with them, and I was so excited to talk with you. So will you just tell people a little bit about, how you found Aeroflow and the process you went through for using their services?
Yeah, for sure. So it was actually through the Birth Hour, through your podcast, that I heard about Aeroflow and decided to just fill out the form. It's like a very simple form you fill out online, where you put in your insurance information, and then Aeroflow does the rest.
Yeah.
And so they got me a free breast pump. I think it was the Spectra is the one that was the one I chose through insurance. But Aeroflow will actually show you all of the different pumps available to you, how much they cost through insurance. Some of them you do have to pay a little bit, and then they show you the ones that are fully covered. And so I decided, I chose the Spectra, and they sent it to me. And then I think I got an email or a text that said hey, thanks for, using Aeroflow. You should also sign up for our lactation classes. And, you get tons of those sort of promotional emails.
Right.
And I didn't think much of it. I was okay, whatever, I'll take a look at this later. And then I started looking more into it, and I was oh, actually these classes look pretty cool. They were fully virtual and they were covered by insurance. And so I decided, I was what the heck, let's do it. And I signed up for, I think, 4 different classes. I only made it to 2 of them, but the 2 that I went to were Lactation 101 and Pumping 101. And they're just such great classes. I was so surprised by the quality of the classes. They're taught by, is it
IBCLC?
Yeah. And they just gave a ton of good information about starting breastfeeding off right. And so it also would be helpful too for people who are newly breastfeeding, to kind of work through some potential breastfeeding issues like latching or positioning. But yeah, I contribute a lot to my success. So my daughter is 4 weeks old now. And we had a pretty solid start to breastfeeding. I've been exclusively breastfeeding, and I contribute a lot of it to having that support from the class. The way the classes run too they're live.
Oh, cool. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, they're virtual, so you can join via Zoom.
Yeah, but
they're live, and so the instructor is there teaching the course. They're also really just super good teachers. I felt the way they presented information was really good. They had tons of visuals and videos, live demonstrations where they have a baby doll, and they were showing different positions and ways to get baby to latch. And so they are live though, so you can ask questions. And so you're able to ask questions in the chat. You can, unmute and have a conversation back and forth. So very helpful for if you have specific questions too about lactation.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially you said, even after baby arrives, to be able to look at the positioning of the baby doll and like position your own baby on screen and be like, like this, or that's great.
Yeah, it's really helpful. And like the pumping 101, like this is my first baby and I had never pumped before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have the same pump that they were using in the demo, the Spectra.
Oh, nice.
And so it was really cool to I kind of like walked along with, did the demo along with them on the same pump, which was just really helpful, having never used a breast pump before. Like,
yeah.
They look kind of scary, at least to me. They looked pretty scary. And so it was nice to like be able to sort of walk through with the instructor and get a demo.
So when you were signing up for it, was the scheduling, were there like several a month or like lots of options? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. It was pretty convenient. They gave a few times a month, I want to say, and like different, I want to say they were like different hours too.
Okay.
But it was like scheduling was really, really easy. I remember like, cause they have, all your information, like they have insurance information already. And so they do all the back end work of clearing this with insurance, because they're classes run by professionals and they do cost money, but insurance covers the cost. And so they would like take attendance at the beginning of the Zoom call. And then they did like all that back end work to make sure it was covered by insurance. And so I didn't have to do anything except like put in my name and email to sign up. So yeah, like really easy.
Awesome.
And again, like kind of going into it, I was like, I'll give this a try, kind of see what it's like. And then I was just like captivated. I remember after the call, getting off particularly the Lactation 101 call, and just like being like to my partner, like, oh my gosh, you've got to hear like what I learned.
Oh, cool.
Like he was like, wow, you see, like, you're like an expert now in lactation. I was like, I feel like it. Like, I feel like I'm like, have a lot of good, solid information. So yeah, like super pleasantly surprised by how informative and just helpful the classes were.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think that I had posted about Aeroflow on Instagram and you responded like, their classes are amazing. And so I knew you were passionate about it enough to like respond to an Instagram story.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. And I knew they had lactation education, but I wasn't fully aware of the format and everything and the fact that they're live. I mean, that's like having your own virtual lactation consultant. So that's amazing.
And I had taken like a childbirth ed class, paid for, like it was a community one that I paid for here. And I live in Minneapolis. And it was like, one of the weeks we went over lactation, and it was like similar information, but like free, like I was like, and it also like it was kind of went more in depth, because the Aeroflow class was specifically a lactation class, like the Lactation 101 class, is what I'm thinking of. So yeah, it was just like very quality, like good information.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to add this definitely to our resources on the website and our childbirth course, because we go over a lot of that stuff as well. But the live aspect, I think, is just so great, even if it's a refresher for, second or third time, or you already took a class, just something to kind of get a refresher and ask questions and things like that. So.
And there are some other classes, like the other ones I signed up for but didn't end up making. There was like one on like maternity leave, like, and your kind of like, I think, lactation stuff around leave and like going back to work.
Right.
But yeah, they were all covered through insurance. So.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to have to reach out to Aeroflow and audit these classes so that I can talk about it more as well. But thank you so much for shining a spotlight on it.
Yeah, for sure. Highly recommend. So when you get that email or that text that says, hey, do you want to also sign up for the classes? You should do it. Because like I said, I was kind of like, oh yeah, okay, whatever, like promotional email for Airflow, but.
Right. And we're all paying so much for insurance, like we might as well get as much out of it as we can.
Totally. It was well worth it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Kate.
Yeah, of course, Fran. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much again to Robyn for sharing her birth story with us, and to Aeroflow Breast Pumps for sponsoring this episode. If you want more information from today's episode, head over to thebirthhour.com and just type Robyn's name in the search bar to find her show notes page. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, head to thebirthhour.com and click Become a Member to pledge your support. And as a thank you, you'll get an invitation to join our private Facebook group and access to exclusive episodes. Your vote of confidence and support means the world to me.